Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, everyone. My name is David Kelly. I am the Program Director for the eLearning Guild, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this live Google Hangout with members of the mLearnCon Advisory Board as we explore how mobile technology is changing the future of learning. We're pleased to welcome a number of guests with us this morning from the mLearnCon Advisory Board. We have Chad Udell, Clark Quinn, Robert Gadd, and we're hoping Sarah Gilbert would also be joining us midway through the chat. To kick things off, and there's a couple of logistics here. We are doing this live, so we will be monitoring the Q&A through Google Hangouts. We'll be checking Twitter for questions. We've got a couple of questions that have already come in. But if you have questions related to mobile learning that you'd like to have posed during this discussion, please do put it into the chat, put it into Twitter using the EL Guild hashtag. We'll be monitoring all of that, and we will be posing a lot of those questions during this chat over the next hour. To kick things off, what I'd like to do, first off, give each of our guests a chance to introduce themselves. And in addition to introducing yourselves, let's just set the stage with a foundational question. As you introduce yourselves, give me what your definition of mLearning is, because a lot of people come to the mLearning discussion with this idea that mLearning is e-learning, where we're taking what's traditionally known as e-learning and we're applying it in a mobile device. And what mLearning is much, much more than that. So as you introduce yourselves, just give me a succinct definition or a description of how you would define what mobile learning is. And I'm just going to go left to right on the screen that I have here. So Chad, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, thanks, David. It's good to be here again. My name is Chad Udell. I'm the Managing Director at Float Mobile Learning. And we are available online at floatlearning.com. And on Twitter, we are at floatlearning. So you can definitely reach us there. We've got a lot of blog posts on this very same subject, and I think quite honestly and very simply, Float defines mobile learning as the ability to provide the right information to the right person at the right time, really regardless of their time, location, or otherwise different context than they might be subject to. We also really try to stress that the M in mLearning is the mobile learner themselves, and not really so much a focus on the technology, but rather the fact that the learner is away from their typical learning environment, whether that be a computer where they can take e-learning, a workshop type of environment, or say, for example, even under the close tutelage of a mentor or otherwise a senior manager that might be providing them their typical learning experiences.
Excellent. Clark, can you take a moment to introduce yourselves and give your description of what mLearning means?
Sure, David, and thanks everybody for being here with us. I'm Clark Quinn of Quinnovation, and what I do is help organizations work more effectively by aligning with how we really think, work, and learn, and trying to spark a revolution to really try and make that stick instead of the sort of industrial age approaches we're using that aren't all so aligned. And my definition of mobile learning is a slight twist on Chad's. To me, it's about augmenting the way we perform wherever and whenever we are. It may be information to us, it may be information from us, it may be interactions with us and connecting us to people, but it's all about making us more effective in doing what we need to do in the organization and for ourselves using mobile devices.
Excellent. Robert, can you take a moment to introduce yourselves and give your description?
Myself? My multiple personalities? All right, cool. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. Robert Gadd. I'm president of OnPoint Digital in Savannah, Georgia. I'm a technologist and a tool provider, so I look at this a little bit differently than the others. You know, I love everything that Clark and Chad added, and I'm sure Sarah's about to say as well. But you know, from a tool perspective, you know, mobile learning is a lot of different things at different times to different people. Pure learning, it could be, you know, at the end of the day, high availability access to, you know, could be performance support checklists or compliance information or supplemental tools to support facilitated training, sales enablement mechanisms, product launch tools. we get asked to solve a variety of different problems, and at the end of the day, it's making that accessible through something that's in everybody's pocket or purse.
Excellent. And Sarah, thank you for joining us. Your take on what mLearning means to you.
So I guess I get to introduce all of myself since I seem like I have multiple personalities now. I am the founder and president of mLearning Solutions, which I think is probably the place where most folks recognize me. And I do a lot of training and workshops on mobile learning, specifically as far as development and design of mobile, and then also a lot of focus on strategy and implementation. I also am most recently the new director of the Public Health Informatics Institute, and what we do here is we basically look at practical ways that you apply information technology in the public health space and also in the global health space. So it's a very exciting new role for me because over the last several years, as part of my business, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of amazing organizations to help them implement strategies around mobile and then just learning technology in general. So I'm very excited to be able to do that here, even at a global level, for something that affects all of us every day. Global public health is pretty important to all of us, so it's a very exciting new role. And was the other question, we were talking a little bit about mobile? Was that the other part of it, Dave?
Yep.
So I guess for me, what mobile means to me is really being able to address a learning need no matter where you are. And I know this kind of spins off of what everyone else has said, and all of us on this hangout today are very much in line with our way of thinking for sure. But I think it's just coming from a background in classroom training and then blended learning and then going into e-learning and really just kind of being a lifelong trainer or teacher. I think the most important thing to me is just being able to help someone no matter where they are, no matter what device they have, that can connect them to that information. So mobile is just an extension for me, another way to let people have access to information. Excellent.
And one of the things that I find very interesting, and it was kind of a thread that went through all of the answers each of you gave, is, and it's kind of ironic in a way, that mLearning is not just about learning. The thread that went through a lot of everything that you said was using these devices in ways that help people do what they need to do, to help them perform their jobs. And that's a very different paradigm than what we are used to in the desktop-oriented world of e-learning, where a lot of that is tailored towards learning and how to do a job. But these devices that we're using are now solving problems in ways that can be integrated directly into the work, where you don't have to stop work so that you can find out how to do something and then go and apply it. We're leveraging these devices in a way that are enabling us to, right in the moment, get the support that we need to perform a task. And for me, that's a critical definitional difference between what we traditionally look at in the e-learning model as compared to mLearning. So one of the questions that came in earlier, on the Google Plus page, we got a couple of questions that have already come in from people who are anticipating the chat, and I thought one was a good one to kind of start the foundation for this discussion. The discussion we're having today is how mobile is changing the future of learning. And we got a question from Rick Bitzer, who says he keeps hearing that mobile technology is changing the future of learning, but he's not totally sure he understands why. He knows that he personally hates using his cell phone instead of a computer, his personal preference. But he hears a lot of people say that when they are off work, they don't want to be bothered by things, and the phone is constantly present. So he's wondering if he can see this idea of reinforcing traditional training through a mobile, but he's very curious to get the expert response from you guys. How do you see that mobile technology is changing the future of learning? So I'm going to go in opposite direction now. Sarah, I'll start with you on that question. How is mobile changing the future of learning in your mind?
Okay, so a couple of things, and this is almost sort of a loaded question, so I'll let different people I know will have certain, I guess, areas of expertise in this question. I think that my perspective is twofold. One, it spins off of the comment that you just made, Dave, and that is, that now we've changed the way that, or the way that mobile has changed information now is that it really gives you a way to access information rather than focus it on learning. And I think it actually goes a step beyond that, because if you've accessed that information in a moment of need and had the ability to apply it when you needed it, then that facilitates learning. So eventually you get to the point where you have learned something and you don't have to keep going back to the device. So I think that's kind of where the mobile learning comes from, is that how can we help people apply it when they need it, so that way it kind of reinforces it, and rather than saying I'm going to teach it to you now and then at some point in the future you may or may not use parts of this, I think this gives us the opportunity to very specifically focus in on learning moments rather than a course or a module. So that's part of it. The other part of it is what I take from that question: how do we look at forcing training on people outside of work? And I don't want to fool with my device anymore. When I'm off the job, I'm putting my phone down, and I tend to agree there are certain instances where I don't want to do something on my phone. I'd rather use either a tablet or be at my desk. It really depends on the type of information or what I need. But I think the bigger part of this is that we're not forcing people to learn something. And I think, unfortunately, some of the buzz around mobile learning is you can take this e-learning course when you're on the train on your way home and do it on your own time whenever you want to. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to. When I'm on my time, I'm not at work anymore, and so I'm not going to sit on the train and take your training. I'm going to need to have access to that when I actually need it. And I think that's where we miss the boat with the way that we are, I guess, marketing that concept of mobile learning, is that it's not about us giving you more crap to do outside of your work hours. It's more about wherever you are and whenever you need it, when you need it, you will have access to it. And then hopefully through that process, you'll learn from it. So I'll go ahead and concede to the next person and let you guys take on some of the more of that conversation.
David, were you
I was
muted?
on mute, yes, it was lovely. But I was passing the baton to you, so thank you.
Thanks. And I'll pretend I'm too, like that. How's that? Well, let me take an example, or just pick a sort of a sector like sales training. It's been it's suggested by many that 30 years ago, if I joined an organization in a sales capacity, I would take formal instructor-led training for a week or 4 weeks or whatever it was and learn everything I needed to know about that job during that formal period. If you fast forward to where we are today, that's not the world we live in. Everything that we're, asked to do, let's say those hypothetical salespeople are asked to know and understand, changes and evolves quite rapidly. It's not something that could easily be institutionalized and stuck in a bunch of 3-ring binders. So mobile gives us an interesting way to look at the whole training experience and start to chop up the way content and information that's going to be packaged and delivered can be organized, packaged, and sent out to somebody. So sort of nuggets or snippets of information make things more highly accessible and discoverable, and they can be used at the time of need during the work hours. I agree with Sarah's point about not wanting to do this in the squeezing things in at the end of your day. But we've certainly seen things that are highly accessible and easy to find are accessed far more often than the one time that they would have been consumed in something formal or something that's longer in duration. So it's cool to see something that on an average was used once or consumed once in a session that's accessed 10 times over the course of the year, because someone's just looking for that little concise piece of information at the time it was needed.
Excellent. Clark, your turn. How do you see mobile shaping the future of learning?
Well, I think the reason for this rapid uptake is something more fundamental. Our brains are really good at pattern matching and meaning making, and they're really bad at doing rote things and doing complex calculations. Technology, digital technology, our computers are the exact opposite. They're really good at remembering rote information and doing complex calculations with heavy overhead. So together we're much more effective. And I think the reason for the mobile uptake is that it's now having that capability wherever and whenever we are. So the way you see people using mobile, they're entering information to remember it, like, oh, I promised to do this, or this is a calendar event, or I'm capturing information, I'm asking questions, or I'm snapping a picture of my parking spot so I don't have to remember it in my head. This device will remember it for me. And this fundamental recognition of the way we can augment our performance and make us more effective is being realized with mobile. And to me, the really exciting opportunity is to bring that back to the workplace, because we've been too focused on just courses, our only solution. And I think what we're seeing is now we can recognize there's a broader way we can be supporting people in performance, and we can start with mobile, and then we can also go back to the desktop and realize we can be doing contextual performance support and being more supportive as well. And that, to me, is the really exciting thing about mobile.
Excellent. And Chad, what would you add to the definition of how mobile is changing the future of learning?
Well, I think that the the future of learning, especially for professional development and ongoing adult education, is going to look very different than what we've typically been ascribing to in the last couple decades, with corporate certifications, ongoing training, as well as workshops, countless hours before e-learning modules, etc. Really, if you track back well before the dawn or the birth of those types of delivery mechanisms, or even at the advent of it, you had a lot of kind of thought given to the different domains of learning. And if you look at really where mobile learning shines is, virtually every sort of aspect of the cognitive domain, as well as the psychomotor domain, if you want to even get that dogmatic, can either be augmented, completely, I don't know, I won't want to say necessarily replaced, but certainly to Clark's point, where the actual kind of assessment of the ability to perform those tasks are done in the tasks themselves, as opposed to, say, for example, a test that shows that you can do those tasks. Really, about the only thing that I feel like mobile might not necessarily be that well suited to would be some of those kind of softer skills related to evaluation, analysis, maybe choosing the appropriate path for the application, or understanding why something is important. Those are things that will be coached. Those are things that will be mentored and be continued to train and be kind of an aspect of the company culture, if you will, that still need to be brought forth in a way that's personable and can't be really necessarily augmented as strongly at the point of need. But who knows? Maybe at some point or another we'll get to this kind of personal assistant for learning, or PAL kind of approach, where some of those will be able to be augmented as well. So long answer short will be, how will it change? Everything is about to change in very dramatic and drastic ways.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you guys said, and to echo what Chad was just saying is, for me, we kind of tend to take a question like, how is mobile changing the future of learning, and we automatically put through this box of what that means, and we're applying it to the work that we do. And sometimes I try and look outside of that, and I think, well, how can the future of learning not be affected by mobile technology when you consider how much our daily life is changing through these devices? I mean, I remember last year for Father's Day, my daughter had given me this poem about me being her dad, and one of the things my dad is this, my dad is that, and one of the things she described was, my dad is a phone tooler, and I didn't know what that was, and I was confused. And when I said, well, what is a phone tooler? Are you calling your dad a tool? Because I'm going to have a problem with that. But she explained. She said, no, Dad. Every time you have a problem, you seem to take out your phone and solve it. And in that context, I was like, okay, I could see that. But that's really the environment that we're in. I mean, how many times have you had a question come up where you just pull out your phone and you Google the answer? It's changing the ways that we just operate on a day-to-day basis. So of course it's going to fundamentally open up new doors for us for learning, which to me is extremely exciting.
David, you're a lot smarter with Google in your pocket.
You certainly are. I know I certainly am. I didn't set the bar that high in the first place, but that's another story. So one of the questions that also came through in the chat that echoes the kind of discussion we're having here is this: there's a lot of times another misconception as it relates to mobile is that you're transitioning from e-learning to mLearning, and you're stopping one to go to the other. and not necessarily the case. E-learning has its place, classroom training has its place, mobile has its place. But can you give one of the questions that came from Yvette Garin? She's interested in learning ways, she operates mostly in a desktop environment. She's interested in learning ways that mobile learning can be used to reinforce the concepts that are taught in an online class or a regular traditional e-learning class or even a classroom training. So how do you see mobile as being used to augment what we are currently doing in our environment rather than just this isolated mobile-only environment? How can mobile be used to enhance what we're already doing? And again, just to set up a new order, Clark, I'll start with you this time.
Well, because I do see mobile as having several roles, and in addition to being a social network and doing things contextually specific, we'll get back to that, and performance support, absolutely augmenting our formal learning is a real opportunity, because the event-based model doesn't work. We know we have to space learning out. So what mobile can do is give us a channel for that. So one of the first things we can do is reactivate that knowledge. Streaming out over time on our mobile devices, we can represent the concepts, present it in a different way, frame it in a different way. We can provide new examples that weren't seen in the learning experience. That can be something that happens relevant in the real world to what we were talking about, and that can be streamed through. And we can provide more practice. We can send out little mini scenarios that require them to practice even soft skills, where you have a person you need to interact with, and you try and apply the knowledge you've learned to navigate your way through that. Now that's all sort of just embedded. But the other thing we can do is start looking at where and when we are and figure out, is there anything relevant we can be doing? So if you're taking a class on sales for your company and you go by a location where the company made a big sale, right then you have a contextual relevance to an example that would be even richer. And you might hear a story about it and somebody talking about it. And then we can start breaking down the barriers. Part of the future learning to me is stop saying there's the formal learning and then you're going out and performing in the world. We can start breaking that down. Maybe you have a meeting where you have to apply, or an assignment where you have to do what you've been learning about in the formal class. And what you can do is, after that performance, you can ask, how did it go? And ask the learner, did that connect to what you learned? Did you apply it? Did you remember to do all these things? And it can be a self-evaluation rubric. Yes, I follow this. Yes, I follow this. Oops, I wasn't quite so good at that. Or it can even be your mentor calls you up and goes, how did you go? So now we're beginning to break down the barriers between that formal learning and your performance in the real world. Excellent.
Robert, I'll pass the baton to you.
Am I on? There we go. I don't think it's mobile is an either-or situation against, compared to e-learning. It's an all of the above. It's certainly an opportunity, and it should be looked at in a context of making things accessible at the time that you need them. And to me, online learning and instructor-led are different than handset learning, which is different than tablet learning. All of those things are opportunities to learn something and have access to information at any time. Pick out one interesting example, though, where mobile can do things in a couple of cool different ways. One of the big things that mobile's good at is video. So not only, to follow on Clark's comment, can video be used to send out additional examples of something that we learned that are easy to consume while we're mobile. We can use our mobile device to record video that have us explain what we just did or how we overcame some objection or something like that. And in a user-generated content sense, upload that to others to be shared. So mobile gives us a couple of interesting and cool different ways to do that with video.
Excellent. Sarah, your thoughts?
I am actually, you stole my thunder there, Robert. So generated content actually was exactly what I was going to say. And I think for classroom training, I think that is our biggest opportunity is user-generated content. How can we allow our folks to use their devices to contribute to our course content? So a couple of different things that I was thinking. One is evaluating your content. So as an instructor, you think that the purpose of this activity is for the learner to take away X. And by using their devices, kind of contributing to what Robert just said, having them record a video of what they learned, and sharing that, whether it's through a class portal or something along those lines, or having them take a picture, or having them capture notes. Those are all things that they can use their devices to do to basically crowdsource better information. And what that allows us to do from an instructor perspective is it allows us to vet our information and make adjustments to our classroom training going forward. So what is it that they took away? Is it what I intended, or maybe even did it evolve to something better than I even intended? And can I use the information that they captured in future courses? So can I use this to basically augment or add to what I've already got in my classroom training? Because for those of you that are familiar with crowdsourcing, if you go to 100 people and ask for an idea on a specific problem, you're going to get several different answers, obviously. And as a whole, we're obviously smarter than we are individually. So I think this whole concept of traditionally the trainer is the person that knows everything, we know that the collective is smarter than that, and I think it gives us an opportunity to create better content. One good example that I've actually used in the past, and specifically in classroom training, that isn't user-generated content but was a successful solution, was a self-paced orientation to a building. So one of the classes that I used to train was a new hire orientation, and the first part of that orientation was having each new hire, and sometimes as a group of 20 or 30 people, go through the building. And one thing that's a good option for that is to give them an iPod, kind of like you would have in a museum, and have them go through and have their own self-paced tour. What that alleviated was me yelling over a crowd of 30 people, we're now in this area and here are the people that work here and what they do, that they could have their own guided tour and pause and play as they needed to. So it actually took some of the onus off of the facilitator and allowed it to be more self-paced and let the learner be in control of their tour of the building. So that's something that's fairly easy to do, and you can do it on an iPod just through an audio file.
Excellent. And Chad?
So how many of us have used Twitter or Facebook, something like that, when we're in a classroom to actually speak with others that even may be in the same classroom with us? You're at a conference and you're following the conference's hashtag, you're in the keynote, you're listening to the keynote speaker, and you're reading the hashtag as it goes through your Twitter stream, right? I mean, the back channel is alive and well, and David, you know that very well because you spend so much time managing that kind of stream of information and monitoring that stream of information and turning it into useful information for others to pay attention to, and adding a lot of value in that type of realm. In addition to those types of traditional avenues, proximal communication, local networks, and the ability to talk real time or share assets and information real time with others can also be even covered by special purpose or single purpose types of application. I give a small pitch for an app that Float built about 3.5-4 years ago called Rabble Browser, and it works really alarmingly well in a classroom situation because it's a shared browsing experience. I can browse to a location on the web and have everybody else in the classroom in their Rabble Browser session following along with me, and we can push assets back and forth to each other. We can have a ongoing chat about the streams. We can even vote up and vote down the content as we're sharing it between each other, and that's something that you just simply can't do with flipboards or flip charts and whiteboards alone. You definitely can't do it with the typical audience response tools that we might be used to. This is something that only works on a mobile device when we all have our own screens, we all have our own internet connections, and we all have our ability to communicate with each other. So just because we're inside of a classroom doesn't necessarily mean that mobile technology can't solve or help solve specific problems that we may already be encountering. The interesting thing, though, is, and I'll take a page from my colleague and friend Gary Woodall, is he equates that to essentially being in your garage and listening to your car stereo. So we don't want to necessarily get too hung up on that. It's certainly good to do, and I've been very guilty of being listening to an NPR story or maybe one of my favorite songs when I pull into the driveway, park the car in the garage, and I let the car run for the minute and a half of the remaining of the story or something like that while I finish up those odds and ends. but the bulk of my time that I'm using my automobile's radio is when I'm out there and about and don't have access to other devices. So, you know, just kind of an adjunct to that, or a funny twist on that type of end of the story.
Excellent. Well, one of the things that you just touched on that kind of dovetails into a question that came through the Q&A, when you were talking about the connections that people are connecting with one another through the back channel, through Twitter, via the mobile devices. One of the questions that comes from Ron Chow through the Q&A, he's talking about this concept of the second screen. I know myself that there are these apps that sometimes I'm using where you could be watching a show on TV, but there's an app that gives you this experience where it's no longer just me isolated watching the TV, but there's this community that's built around everyone watching this show through this app, where you have this second screen experience. And I don't necessarily have to go through each one of you separately. We can go risk anarchy and just have anyone who can answer the question speak out. But have you seen any applications of this second screen concept and how it could be used in a learning environment, or anything even like it that might be triggered by the question?
Well, the entire sector of augmented reality applications essentially operates as a second screen for life. I mean, that's the entire function of the technology. It is augmenting, it is adding an additional layer over, it is additional information that's not available in your environment, and it operates completely as something to inform you as what's going around. So a couple key examples that I'll share with you specifically. The application WordLens. Some of us have probably dabbled around with it, but it's actually a highly effective little real-time translator that uses optical character recognition to translate signage that might be in a foreign language into a language that we can understand. And it works pretty darn slickly. It requires some specific things. It doesn't work really well in low light conditions. It doesn't work really well when the light is very, very high intensity and low contrast, like blown out, very kind of sunrise, sunset type of thing where there may be backlit situations. But it does work really well at simple, you know, the types of 2, 3, 4 word signage that you might be in a foreign country or something like that, not understand what a sign means. And if you go out into that roadway, you could end up getting hit if you don't understand what that signage means. Another example that I think is really actually very fun is that I'm a big player of this new game that came out for the Xbox and Microsoft family of game consoles and PCs called Titanfall, and they just released a companion application that if I'm on the same Wi-Fi network as my Titanfall game is while I'm playing, my iPhone or iPad can operate as a second screen showing me a heads-up display of the map. Now there is a map that's on the gameplay in the television screen, but it's terrible. It's not a very good map, and the gameplay map that's on this device is dedicated solely to being a map, and it shows everything. What team people are on, what their overall player names are. It gives me, I can tap in and get like, okay, I should stay away from that field of battle because these guys over here have a lot more kills than I do, and if I go over there, I'm going to be in serious trouble. So, I mean, that bit of information is not happening in the regular field of gameplay, and I would have no ability to access that information if I didn't have that second screen. So, just a couple of quick examples.
I'll mention one that's more classroom focused. A partner of company of mine, Learning Mate, has an application called GoClass, and it allows you to, the teacher beforehand creates a lesson plan, but in the classroom it allows you to put one thing up on the big screen, send something else out to the learners. They can give control to the learners on their screen where they can be drawing some stuff and sharing it with the rest of the class, and it can even put out quizzes and give the feedback to the instructor so they can see what the people's learning, you know, what they're understanding or what they're not understanding. And so this is augmenting differential information to different parts of the classroom to make the learning experience more effective.
And I was, go ahead, Robert.
Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah. Ladies.
Okay. No, I was just going to add to, I think, David, you brought it up earlier about conferences, and maybe this was even part of the question, but that's where I found this experience to be most useful at a very basic level. I've attended several conferences that I didn't actually physically attend because I attended them through the back channel. I think the benefit of this is that you learn kind of the real story, not the superficial story. in the back channel. So when I'm in a session, I typically participate more in the back channel of that session than I do in the session itself. Now, as a presenter or a facilitator, I can go back and look at the back channel and I can find out what people really thought of my content and also what they added to it. So that way, next time, I'll typically mention some of those things because people typically will come up with some really good content as well. But outside of that, if I'm in a session and it's not going so well, you can typically see as a whole what people really think about that topic and what their experiences have been in that. So I remember, I remember going to, I think it was one of the guild conferences virtually because I couldn't attend, and I got so much more out of the back channel in addition to being in person. I got so much more out of the articles and the resources on the back end of that. So when we talk about augmenting what you're learning, think of how much more value it adds to the conference, because not only are you meeting the people, networking, meeting presenters, and getting their resources in the class, you're also getting, you know, however many times magnified or multiplied that is with the people that are participating in that back channel and Twitter, and contributing their resources, their experiences, and their articles through that same channel. So I feel like that's probably, for me, been my best experience in that type of a, I guess, format.
So I was just going to toss a couple of random comments out there on second screens. First of all, I like using those second screens in examples like Chad gave with Rabble Browser. You know, essentially everyone using a screen to help them with what else is going on in the room. I love the back channel thing too. I think where it's good for all those things, it's really bad for second screens when you're in a movie. The last thing I want is to go to a movie and have a bunch of people looking at their phone. You know, so I'm wary of anything where we're going to teach people to use second screens to do things. What's that?
There is that app now that that tells you when the best time is to go to the bathroom in the movie, like what the best part of the movie is, where you can go take a bathroom break.
Yeah, you know, for all the things I love about mobile, I don't like people to use those devices within a movie theater. So it hurts me to encourage that to happen. I think the last random thought is, you know, technologies, wearable technologies like glass are going to bring second screen to a whole new level for us. You know, I think it's going to be cool to see what happens there. I don't think we're there yet, but it's certainly an interesting near-term horizon. And then final bonus thought, I love Chad's word slickly. I'm not sure that's a word, or I might have to go get that domain. That's a pretty cool word, Chad. Slickly.
Well, one of the things that, segueing from where Robert just said, Google Glass. You know, it gets into the question of what is mobile technology. Now, all of you have been playing in the space that is defined as mLearning for quite some time now, and even in this short blip of time that we're existing where mobile is, and which is, you know, maybe a decade around there for the majority of people, a lot less actually, but in terms of where it's been implemented, the technology that has been in existence in that short time frame has changed dramatically. And it's only the pace at which things are changing is only changing faster. It's just getting much more quick, and glass is a great representation of that. So based on what you've seen getting to the point that we're at today, and what you see in the near term going on, and how things are continuing to evolve, how do you define Google Glass as a mobile device? Do you consider the entire concept of wearable technology as part of the mLearning discussion? And I'll go through order here because that was just chaos when you guys are doing it on your own. I will start with Robert on this one. How do you feel wearable technology and other technologies that you see coming down the pike are changing the mLearning discussion? Robert, you're on mute.
I was muted, sorry. You know, the whole category of, the broader category of intelligent devices, all have some overlap into the learning world, the M space, the E space, etc. You know, I own all the toys. You know, I have a great job because I get to go buy all these things and try to figure out what people are doing with them and what they might do with them. And you know, as yet, it's still not gelling in my head yet. But we see advances yesterday, like Apple's iOS 8 announcements yesterday related to mHealth. We're going to have things where intelligent devices, be they in our on our head or on our wrist or whatever it is, are going to give us a quick and easy way to tap into information for things that are going on as using these devices to monitor the places that we're in or the situations that we're in, or our personal health or whatever it is. I could see something where my blood pressure is too high and my intelligent watch tells me that, and it pops up something on a device or a screen of my choice that tells me how to fix that problem. So there's a lot of interesting overlap things that are going to happen, but I don't see anybody taking a course on Google Glass.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah, do you have anything you want to add about the wearable technology conversation?
Yes, so I think that, I have Glass just like pretty much everybody on this call, and what I found is important about wearable technology right now is that it really plays to the advances in technology and the opportunities that we have. I think that obviously nothing in its current form, or most things in its current, in their current form, won't look the same, probably as soon as a year from now, and certainly not 5 years from now. But what's important is more of the context behind it and how we are really looking at ways, it's a field of technology, looking at ways to augment our senses and augment ourselves. So how do you give yourself, if I were to have a way to implant a smartphone in my body, it's almost looking at ways of how can we get it closer to how we function just, physiologically. So if you think about glass, you're wearing it on your face. If you think about a watch, you're wearing it on your arm. I think that the importance of it is that we understand why this is an important opportunity to consider. And we can help shape what that looks like. So from a learning perspective, I've found that in researching uses of glass, it helps me really understand the importance of context to training. And I think every time we see another device, we see other opportunities of, oh wow, I've been training people this way for so long now, and I didn't realize that this really probably wasn't the best way to teach them this because the perspective is all wrong. And so I think it's looking at things like that that help us really create better training, and and it helps with technology. So when you have folks that are in the training field that are part of those technological advances, there are a couple of us on the call that are developers for Apple, for example, and when you're part of that group and you're part of having that input into those types of programs, I think it's helpful. And when you're participating in betas on software, that's helpful to give that perspective. And when it comes to how some of these things are changing what we're doing, especially from our perspective, I know that Robert mentioned the developer conference yesterday for Apple. We have a new freaking programming language now. And so from our perspective, this is, these are things that are already overwhelming in the training space, and it's only getting to be more so. So I think it really also reinforces the need to learn how to partner with other people, with skill sets, with specific skill sets. How do you partner with developers? How do you partner with designers? And what are the skills that you need to be able to communicate with these folks, not be those folks? Because I don't think that it is realistic to think that you can play all of those roles in one person effectively. So that's kind of where I see this technology space, especially when it comes to wearable or any new technology.
Hear, hear.
Chad, any comments on the wearable tech discussion?
So, yeah, I am also a glass explorer, and I saw there are a couple of people that are attending here that are glass explorers. I feel that it's it's an interesting first salvo, but it is just that. It is a kind of a test. It is a piece of beta hardware running beta software in a very beta-like wearable or ubiquitous computing type of approach. It still doesn't have a lot of contextual awareness in terms of being able to offer a lot of value. Glass doesn't know exactly where I am unless I've got a couple to my device, and I've got some background services running. It's not really that savvy about the fact that I want to say, for example, never record something when I enter a specific premises, or any of these other types of things that you hear the typical glass hole, if you will, kind of partaking in. It doesn't save you from those types of avenues. There are some really interesting devices, though, that are currently on the horizon that start to close some of those gaps, as well as provide really interesting human-computer interaction opportunities, and I think really some deep and interesting ways to take advantage of context and space around the individual, situational awareness, and a variety of other things. Some of the links that I posted there, there's an open platform-based fitness band, similar to like a Fitbit Force or a Flex or the Nike Fuel Band or any of the other fitness bands that are out there. It's called the Naboo. It's from Razer. They're a gaming company. This fitness band, though, is going to have an open API, meaning any mobile developer will be able to tap into that. So why not be able to put that, say, for example, on a wrist of a retail associate, find out how much time they spent on the floor versus how much they were in the back, you know, maybe perhaps even make information available to them that on their companion smartphone based off of where they are in the store, being able to provide them location-based awareness of, okay, the men's socks are over on, you know, aisle 12 or something like that, whatever it might be. There's a lot of opportunity there for performance data to be sent back to the mothership, if you will. The Epson Moverio BT200 smart glasses, those are a full augmented reality experience. Glass is not really capable of doing a stereoscopic presentation, obviously, because it has one lens. It's also not meant to be used all of the time as like an omnipresent overlay, whereas the Epson Moverio takes a much more like Wayfinder, Terminator vision style approach, so it could provide you basically real-time information based off of pattern recognition, no matter what it is that you're looking at, assembly instructions for engines, computer parts, firearms, any of those types of things, pattern recognition, real-time translation of text. I mean, you name it, you got it. Location-based assistance, walk into an office location if I'm a repair tech, where's the router, where's the server room? Well, it can give me directions because it knows exactly where that is, right? And then we look at some of these other tools like the Mayo from Thalmic, and this is actually an adjunct to you. If you go to that website, which I posted in the link there, thalmic.com/Mayo, it actually allows you, it's a motor control, essentially a wristband that senses which tendons are being tensed in my hand, and I can use that for real-time manipulation of everything from simulations that I might be watching in my augmented reality to controlling a drone copter, you know, and I mean that's completely mobile. It's always with me, and it actually learns based off of my past history using the tool. So, I mean, where is wearable going? It's going to become very quickly a more functional thing rather than a toy or a gimmick pretty quickly. As soon as a few companies start to recognize and realize that the use cases, the business cases are there, there will be research dollars that will be spent very shortly, and then those research dollars will become production-based products and production-based services and solutions for their employees a lot sooner than later.
Excellent. And Clark, your thoughts on the wearable technology and where it's going?
The points that they're making to me strike, you know, back up to a deeper model, which says, to the extent that we can have more sensors, understanding more about where we are and what's happening, that can be a camera that can look out and see what we're looking at, and a microphone that can be listening to what we're hearing, and body sensors that can tell our, you know, blood sugar and our temperature and the ambient temperature and our location and our elevation and the weather, you know, through barometric pressure. All this integration is the opportunity we have, and as Chad's pointing out, you know, which muscles are currently tense to not. And then the flip side is channels to provide information to us, you know, visual overlays, so we have a heads-up display and a little voice whispering in our ears, and pressure, little taps, and maybe richer forms of sensation that we can have. Start creating a richer way in which we can be augmenting us. And I think the underlying principle is we want to find what are we doing, what are we wanting to do. I would love to have a system that would look at somebody I'm talking to and remind me of their name, because that's just one of the things our brains are really bad at, right? And my brain apparently is really bad at it. I recognize them, but I can't remember their names to save my life. And ongoing, eventually I would like my learning experience to be a personal mentor with me all the time that knows what my goals are and can help add that extra thing. It would be like this person who's walking with me and knows my goals and knows what I'm doing and can add that information I don't have. So, wearables are very much part of the overall mobile experience because they're all about helping us do better at what we were trying to do anyways. And I think this is really cool, and we're going to get smarter. I think one of the really important principles right now, the glass hole phenomenon is because people can see, it's very visible. They're not blended more into the environment, and the more that there'll be joint pressures. One will be we'll get more comfortable with people wearing more bizarre things, but the other side is these things will become more built into things we normally would be wearing anyways, and there will be that tension between who's trendy and who's just trying to have it work subtly so that we can be more augmented without being flamboyant about it, and either one works. And people like I don't always necessarily buy the latest thing because I want to wait until I know how it's going to make me more effective. And I wasn't going to buy an iPad when it was first announced, but between the time it was announced and when it was released, I figured out how I was going to use it to make me more effective, and I bought one the first day it was available. Glass, I haven't made that transition yet to a total value proposition, but I think that's coming rapidly as others have mentioned, and I think that's where things get interesting and even, shall I say it, fun.
Hey, I got one thought to throw out there. I saw the movie over the weekend, Her, from last year. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but it's a Spike Jonze movie about the guy has a relationship with his operating system, which is in his basically a smartphone. But the way he interacted with it virtually all of the time was just a tiny wearable earpiece. So the future of how he was interacting and hearing thoughts in his head and actually developing a relationship with something as simple as a tiny earpiece. So that's definitely a big part of wearables in the future too.
Well, one of the
that's your homework assignment to check that out.
Go watch that movie.
It's in my Netflix queue.
Yeah. One of the things that I find very interesting is as it relates to just wearables and how it's expanding what we look at as the definition of mobile. And that, to me, is what makes this whole conversation that we have at mLearnCon every year and around this idea of mLearning so important, because even the conversation that we had last year is changing this year. Wearable technology is going to rapidly expand what we look at as mobile devices, and one of the things I really enjoyed as you guys were chatting, I was looking at some of the comments that were coming through the Q&A, and we had Peter, James, and Ben and others talking in there, sharing what they're doing around these wearable technologies and really just exploring the possibilities that these new technologies open up as it relates to learning and helping people do their jobs better. And for me, that's a huge part of what mLearnCon is all about, is this idea of looking at what mobile technologies are and what new avenues for helping people do their jobs and learning these new technologies open up for us. And each year we look at what's going on with the technology world around us and how is that expanding the options that are available to us as we look to support people in the jobs that they're doing. And one of the things that we're a little towards the end of our time here, but one of the questions I definitely wanted to pose before we wrapped up in a few minutes is one of the my favorite aspects of what we do in terms of helping other people learn is providing examples. And I think that's one of the gaps that people have had in the early stages of mLearning is the examples that they've seen are e-learning on a mobile device, so that's where some of the confusion comes for mLearning. And one of the things I loved about mLearnCon last year was we were able to hold our first mLearning Demo Fest, that there was enough adoption of people having these projects that they created that they brought them into the conference, and we had that Demo Fest where people were able to go around and see mobile learning in action. And I know that each of you have worked in organizations where you've helped, over the years you've worked with different organizations as a consultant to help them bring mLearning projects. And I'm curious, as you've seen that evolve, what are some good examples, keeping proprietary information private, of course, but can you share some examples of some of the uniquely mobile solutions that you've seen organizations inventing and creating to help people do their jobs better? So with that in mind, I will start with Chad. Can you share some examples of how mobile is changing and some tangible examples that people can learn from as it relates to mobile being used to help people do their jobs?
Sure. So I'll give you a real quick example of a sales enablement application that I had to help in designing and developing for a company. Very simple example. This company had a lot of products, unique products, SKUs, SKUs for short, right? And the buying process was relatively complicated, meaning people had to go through a multi-step kind of questionnaire and stuff like that in order to be able to determine which of the products would be correct for them. In reality, a lot of it boiled down to geolocation and then what type of product that they wanted to purchase from an overall category. And via, like, basically, I don't know, 2 simple basic interactions where they choose their location and then the product family, we could provide them a list of specific products that would work for them, allowing them to even see the PDF and send it to themselves directly from that tablet device without ever having to go and pick up a pile of or paper from a pile of literature, or even in the case of this particular instance, it was a client that was traveling to a lot of conferences and shows. They no longer have to ship PDFs. There is no paper documents that have to be shipped around with them. Nothing needs to leave. No printing, no reprint type of a basis or anything like that. And in addition to that, they did not previously have proper ways to track how many of the brochures were even really being taken and used at a specific event. And now they have an idea exactly of how many brochures get sent from the sales floor. And beyond that, they could even put tracking information inside of the documents themselves to determine how often they're being opened. So kind of a crossover between sales and marketing, removing pieces from the print chain, and then also adding a level of evaluation or measurement that they did not have available to them previously. So very easy, very simple, and a very tangible example.
Excellent. Thank you. Clark?
A couple examples come in, and in both cases they came from organizations who had started doing mobile and wanted to get a bit more strategic, and so came in and started brainstorming with them about opportunities they might have. And interestingly, they both ended up being social. So the first one, the funny side of the story is that I sort of asked at the beginning of the brainstorming session where they brought in representative people, I said, is social on the table? They said, absolutely not. There's no way it can be social. Okay, and everybody heard that, right? So we start going around the table, and the first thing everybody's going, I give them an introduction to mobile concepts, and then we start saying, what would help people perform better? How could we be using these devices? Oh, well, they should be sharing stories of their wins and losses with other people. And, we definitely need a channel where right then somebody can ask somebody who's had an exact case like that, where they can, how they solved it. It was all social. It was very much about finding communication with people. So this was a sales team that they were trying to support, and these were, but it turns out the communication with the salespeople was where they really were seeing the opportunity. The second thing was a hospital, and they were particularly working, caring for the aged. And the opportunity they were looking for there was, one of the things they have to do is help the families of these people who are, have infirmities to understand the procedures they're going to need to be doing when they get home. And so one of the things they thought, not only was there, job support for doing it while they're in the hospital, so job aids and things, but capturing videos of how to do it and sharing that with the family right there, so they can gather around this device and say, let's look at this video together and let's talk through, and we can stop it and run back if you have any questions. But it became a way to make much more concrete the procedures these people would need to be following. And so again, it's ways of sharing information and connecting people together to improve their outcomes.
Robert, your thoughts?
We had from Demo Fest last year, a customer that presented and actually won the Qualcomm Award, Home Depot Canada, that built a performance support app using a tablet that was issued and shared in and amongst the associates at the store. What was cool and the enabling component of it from a mobile perspective is on the steel in the store, they would put a QR code, and the sales associate would walk over to that, and if a customer was there saying, hey, tell me about this, zap the QR code, immediately the information comes up that the company had aggregated about the products in that particular bay in that particular row. So it was product training product information or videos, perhaps from the product vendor, how-to guides of how to apply that, and a recipe on how to be successful with it, as well as associated product training that somebody had. But a very effective way to do something and bring more knowledge to not only the sales associate, but it was a tablet that was then shared with the customer to demonstrate those same things.
Excellent. And Sarah, do you have an example you'd like to share?
I do, and I'll just quickly mention that if you use Google or Wikipedia or pretty much any app on your phone, those are all apps or types of mobile learning. So mobile learning is really just encompassed by anything that you can use to have access to information. So in the way that we're suggesting it, most people, or pretty much everyone, if you have a smartphone, you have been exposed to mobile learning in the context that we're giving today. But I will say a specific workplace solution that I'm going to use one that I'm working on now. I mean, I have some past examples. They're mostly around sales, because those are always the types of learners that we weren't able to access before because they were away. They weren't able to come in and be pulled into a classroom or scheduled for a very specific learning event. And so they kind of lend themselves to a mobile format. But the type of audience that I have now is a very unique type audience where all of my learners are external. And so the folks that I'm training could be accessing information on anything. And what we found in research of analytics of our current content that we have out on our site is that most people are accessing content from a mobile operating system. So a couple of things. One, is important to understand your audience and understand what their needs are. But the project that I'm working on right now is actually helping public health centers identify the critical success factors for a specific informatics project. And so I'm designing and developing a mobile solution around this where you can, as a stakeholder in that process of a new informatics project, you can actually access a tool on your mobile device that will tell you what are the factors, and I believe there are 8 of them. What are the critical success factors for this project? What does each one mean? And where are my gaps? And so this gives us two types of information. One, yeah, we can see who's accessing this tool, and we can ask them, did you find this helpful? But we can also, on the back end of this, we can see what their answers are. So now if they say, I've got the majority of the people say, well, we really have struggled with stakeholder involvement, or we really struggle with leadership, or we really struggle with project management. Now I know that my audience has a greater need around one of those particular factors, and it helps me develop more relevant content for them to drill down. So that's kind of the advantage of mobile, is that it gives us more information than just that one event itself. And so not only are we creating a tool that's going to help our audience identify their own needs and have a tool where they can identify those gaps for themselves, it also helps me identify where my audience is having, struggles or having issues. And I think that's one of the benefits of mobile on a greater scale. Almost probably all of us, when we create a new mobile project, one of the first things is looking at evaluation. And what is it that we're looking to measure? What is our main motive, that we want to evaluate? But what's kind of our ulterior motive? What else what other type of information can we get from this that might help us be more effective as a learning function?
Excellent. And what I love about everything that you guys have been saying is that it's these examples that make what mLearning really is real for people, where they see people taking these devices and using them in ways that couldn't be implemented without these devices, that really starts defining what mobile is and getting people to truly understand how it's changing the way we learn and help people perform. And it's one of the reasons I've always loved the Demo Fest format that we have at Guild events. We're going to have mLearning Demo Fest again this year at mLearnCon, where you'll be able to come see a lot of different examples from people who are using these technologies to redefine what learning and performance support means within their organizations. We are running a little bit short on time. We're a little over the allocated hour that we have, so I appreciate the people staying here. There was another really good question as it relates to how we address IT concerns that came from Peter in the chat. We don't have time to address it during the live chat, but I will schedule a separate chat with one of the panelists, or maybe more than one, who can handle answering that question, and we'll post that to our YouTube page as a follow-up question, because it is an excellent question for us to ponder. We just don't have time for it today. So first off, I want to thank each of you for taking the hour with me this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are, and also all the viewers who watched us live or watching us via the recording. Very, very interesting discussion. I want to thank you each for taking some time to chat with me this morning.
Thanks, David. It's been great.
Yep.
If you would like to learn more about everything that we've been talking about today, and also about how you can use mobile technology to enhance what you're doing in your organization to help people learn and perform, I do encourage you to join us this coming June at mLearnCon in San Diego. It's going to be the 24th through the 26th in San Diego. The people that you've been listening to today, the expert you've been listening are the advisory board for this conference, who have helped us build the conference. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to be another outstanding event and an outstanding location. So with that, I thank you for joining us here live. I want to thank our panelists again, and we will see you next time on our Twist conversations on the Twist blog at twist.elearningguild.net, or learn more about our conference at mlearncon.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.